Our ICX software is 20 years old. 8 dot anything, it was written like 20 years ago. And, routing and switching is pretty simple. It works. You just bake new features in and things like that. But 9.0 is around the corner. So if you're not aware, ICX 9.0 is roadmap slated. It should release sometime around March. And I wanted to sit down and talk to Bharath about it because some of the internal literature I'd seen had some terms in there that I wasn't familiar with. And I thought, hey, I've got a great idea. I'll get a hold of Bharath. I'll say, hey, dude, do me a favor. Tell me kind of what's going on with this, what this is. And then I thought, well, let's just record a podcast because everybody needs to know about this. So I sound like I'm a giant, over-caffeinated, hyperactive spaz during this, but I'm excited about it. They're doing a lot of really, really awesome stuff in this software, and I wanted to get this information out to everybody. So do me a favor, help me welcome Bharath to the podcast, and as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Bharath, this is one of those things where from now on, when I call you and say, hey, you have a minute to chat, you're going to say, no, I do not. And please never call me again because I keep suckering you into recording a podcast with me. So welcome back. It's good to have you.
Thanks. It's good to be back, Matt. Either you really like me to be on the show or you just like to put me on the spot.
Hey, sometimes both are fun. I don't really know. I mean, you're great. You're awesome. And I think one of the things that I kind of mentioned is when you work this hard and you put this much effort into it and you have some pretty big things coming up, you need a platform to get that information out there. And as far as I can tell, there's some things we can talk about, some things we obviously can't, but I think this is a great time for you to get some of that information out there. So tell me what's going on.
Sounds good. Well, so currently we are trying to ramp up and get FastIR 9.0 out, and I think we are on track. So I'm expecting that to come out sometime in March. So yeah, we are collectively working towards getting that release out.
Okay, so that's awesome because so full disclosure, obviously, internally we have a little bit more information about things than what's available externally, but I saw some info come out and there was a keyword in there that I saw and I looked at it and I went, what is that? And I've got friends in the industry and I asked a couple of them, they're like, huh, what? So the word was SDVoE. And so of course you start playing around with acronyms trying to figure it out. And I thought, you know what? I have a much better way to do this because if I'm asking this question, there's probably others asking as well. So go to the source of the wealth of knowledge and grab Bharath and say, okay, what is this? So explain to me, what is SDVoE?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So SDVoE is a short form for software defined video over Ethernet. And basically SDVoE is a consortium, a group of pro AV manufacturers, system designers, and integrators that make products. Essentially, all of them get together and they provide solutions for Ethernet-based audio-visual distribution. So that's the whole gist of it. So this consortium was formed and all of these vendors put their products together to form a solution that is cost-effective to switch video over Ethernet. And so the reason they formed this group was because the market is big. Typically about 11 million ports are being sold in the space and the market size is about $4 billion. And it is a cost-effective solution. These big players in the industry like Crestron and Savant and Extron, they use the traditional matrix switching for different video applications. When I say video applications, I'm talking about video wall, multi-viewer screens, in large public venues and auditoriums and sports centers and places like that. So typically they use the traditional matrix switching, which is quite expensive. So what the SDVoE Alliance has said, hey, why don't we come in and provide the same solution, but at a better price. So that's what we're doing. And CommScope is now officially an adopting member. And we are basically enhancing features in the software to support the efforts of SDVoE, and we're also positioning some of our platforms in the space.
Okay, so here's where I have to dig a little bit, and the reason for that is we have such a diverse product portfolio, right? And we have such a diverse existence within the world of networking, right? So when we talk about video, there's so many different multitudes of ways we can talk about that. When we talk about the classic ARIS business, where you have providers that are streaming this video content out to set-top boxes and things like that. And then we talk about streaming in other methods, such as, the main thing I can think of is Netflix, right? Or Amazon Prime or YouTube or whatever you're doing. You're streaming that content from a head into whatever device you're on. So in my mind, there's kind of a separation in there, right? Where you have classic provider streamed content, and then you have, we'll call it over the internet streamed content where you're streaming Netflix, things like that. When we talk about SDVoE, what spaces is that touching? And when we talk about solutions, what is one of those solutions? I mean, is there something that you can kind of touch on that lays that groundwork out?
Sure. So SDVoE is the solution is pretty simple. It's transmitting video, and it's not over the internet, or it's not over service provider networks or any of that sort. It's just simply transmitting video from point A to point B, and switching it onto different screens and multiplexing it. And I shouldn't say multiplexing, I should say multicasting it. So it's completely off net. So it could be live streaming. So say there's a performance going on, and that needs to be the video needs to be broadcasted into the screens in the same space. So that's what this solution talks about.
So like large public, I can't speak. Large public venues, right? So
large public venues would be the
okay.
Yeah, exactly, be the place. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So does it have? I don't want to get overly technical with it, and I know it's a consortium of and things like that, but is there a lot of multicast underlying capabilities in there that are baked in, or is there a lot of multicast configuration that has to be done within the switching environment that enables it?
Not at all. Well, for one, you're actually right. It is multicast, but it doesn't involve too complex configuration. It's basically just simply enabling multicast or IGMP-v2 snooping to be more specific, right? So there are just two main requirements for a switch vendor like us to be part of the solution. One is to have support multicast, and then the other one is to have high density 10 gig ports, because they're specifically one of the requirements for transmitting video is 10 gig ports. So we have both today, and simply by enabling IGMP, we can get in and be part of the solution. But in 9.0, what we're doing is we're planning on optimizing multicast so that there's an ease of use, ease of deployment. There's somebody who's not familiar with multicast can simply plug in the switch, enter a couple of commands, and get it set up. That's the goal.
Hold on, I got to get my jaw off the floor. So, because coming from the world I come from, multicast has probably been, let me say it as gently as possible. Multicast for network engineers has been probably one of the hardest things to grasp in certain areas, right? It kind of changes the way you have to think about things a little bit, and because it's very deep and it's very complex, but when you do it
for me too.
Yeah, but when you do it correctly, it works brilliantly. I mean, it's a very beautiful protocol. So you talk about IGMP v2. I guess I'm a little surprised that there wasn't a drive to push this towards v3, even though v3 only buys you certain things like whitelisting, blacklisting, things like that, and source-specific multicast. But when you get into that, do you think there's a roadmap item to say, look, it supports v3, but we had to back rev it to make sure that it was backwards compatible with v2, because v2 is the most widely deployed version of it, right?
You're right. So we do support both V2 and V3 for groups, IGMP groups. So I just mentioned V2 because that is the minimum requirement. So in most cases, V2 is commonly used, so we're going with V2.
Yep. Well,
But it doesn't mean we don't support V3.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And V1 is deprecated for the most part, anyways. I mean, it doesn't get used.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And PIM dense mode is highly used because it's super easy to turn on. It's just super inefficient.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, that's really cool. So now I'm glad I have an understanding of that because I'm a bit of a multicast nut. I mean, when we started doing some different training within support, they were saying, "Hey, we really need some multicast stuff," and so we dove in. I mean, underwater, digging into this thing every which way we could. And it's something that I now kind of enjoy. Maybe I'm sick and twisted. I don't know, but I enjoy multicast. I think it's fun. Maybe I need another hobby. I don't know. So that's really interesting. Cool. Okay. So I think one of the reasons why I was so excited about this is so many of our conversations that we have on the podcast around Wi-Fi and smart zone and things like that. But I'm a routing and switching guy at heart. I can't get rid of it. I love it. I get really excited about it. And so ICX 9.0 has been something that you and I have had multiple conversations over the past year about it. And I'm excited about it. I mean, to me, it's a very big deal. To me, it's something that was not only necessary, but will also probably shift a lot of, how our routing and switching products are viewed and looked at and utilized, right? So you take the years of work that has gone into this, and I don't know how many times you either had to cry yourself to sleep or seriously consider drinking yourself to sleep because projects like this are huge. Are there other things coming that you can talk about as well?
Sure, yeah. Are you mean specific to SDVoE or in 9.0 in general?
Let's talk 9.0 for a minute. If we get into SDVoE and multicast, we'll be here for 3 hours, and I'm not going to do that to you or who's listening.
Sure. So 9.0, along with 9.0, we're getting our new platform out, which is the ICX 7850 48 copper SKU. So that's a platform that's going to be released along with 9.0. And then on the infrastructure side, we're working on Manageability 2.0, which is a huge lift. It's going to have things like open source SSH and DHCP. We're going to scale up the DHCP. And then we're getting new manageability interfaces like RESTCONF API for natively that's going to be supported in ICX. Then we're going to have a new web UI in ICX. So all the cool things around Manageability 2.0. Then we're extending VXLAN support to ICX 7550. So essentially what that means is we can bring the tunnels, virtual tunnels, VXLAN tunnels down to the closet. So I'm actually excited about 7550 having VXLAN support, and then eventually we want to have routing in and out of those tunnels. So that's our vision, and we're looking at that. Some of the other features are we're adding PTP packet prioritization in platforms like 7550 and 7650 for specifically used for time-sensitive applications. We just spoke about SDVoE. And then a couple of more features. One of my favorite is config, archive, replace, and rollback. I'd like to actually spend a minute talking about that because this is actually a fail-proof mechanism when you're configuring switches remotely. So essentially what this feature lets you do is roll back to a previous config and also archive configs anytime you make changes to the running config. So in short, this will be a fail-safe mechanism for remote configuration.
Yes. That is awesome.
Yeah, and last but not least, protected link groups, similar to spanning tree, but except it's more efficient and faster in the convergence on the layer 2 side. So that's another huge lift we're getting in 9.0. Yeah. So that's at a high level, those are the features that we're getting in 9.0.
Well, one thing we're going to do at launch whenever this thing goes out is I'm going to live stream this thing to death because I think it needs to be put out there. Look, I mean, I have the fattest fingers on the planet. When I start typing, I can type about 120 words a minute, but that doesn't mean any of them are spelled correctly in the right order or anything else. So the config rollback is huge. I mean, we can't obviously take credit for inventing that, but introducing it is massive because, you know, I think one of the things that I've kind of lost touch with, and one of my best friends in the world, he's an engineer, he's still in operations, and he's dealing with stuff day in and day out. And we talk about everything that's going on. And it almost got to the point where I started to lose touch with some of the stuff that goes into an operations role every day until he and I started talking about that more. And I'd kind of pry information out of him here and there. But that piece right there is something that I guess you don't realize how much you really want it or need it until it's gone or until you're not using it. So bringing that into the mix that's huge. I mean, it makes everybody's life so much easier. Just being able to roll that config back and say, okay, whoops, that deployment didn't go well. We've got to go back to the drawing board and look at it. Huge. I think that's a huge win for our customers. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about RESTCONF for a minute, because I know I've talked to you and Marcelo on previous podcasts about APIs. And I mean, first of all, I can't imagine why you would introduce this into ICX since you've been working on it so diligently and hard. So when you talk about RESTCONF, pretend for a second that you don't know I'm a moron. Explain to me what RESTCONF is.
So RESTCONF is essentially an API that, well, actually, let me start over. RESTCONF is an IETF standard that is used to configure networks programmatically, and it's essentially a successor to REST API and netconf configuration protocols, and it's primarily driven by Yang models that basically describe these configurations and operations. So, you know, it's in short, if I were to simplify my first statement, it just basically means that RESTCONF provides a programmatic interface into ICX. And what we are doing is we're adopting the OpenConfig data modeling language to perform RESTCONF operations in ICX. This is what we'll have in 9.0. Yeah.
So basically what you're doing is you just entered 2021 and said, we're just going to slap the 21st century right in the face and keep running with it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay. I have so many questions. I could do this all day. One thing I'm wondering about is if you're going to install 9.0, what are the prerequisites? Do I need to be running an 8090 UFI image to be able to get to it?
Yes, I would say, you know, prior to 8090, we didn't have the UFI piece. So 8090 has the UFI image, and it's just easier to upgrade from 8090 onwards. Anything after 8090, 8095, you should be good to go for 9.0.
Okay, perfect. And then my next question is, you have put tireless amount of hours into the Ansible modules and playbooks and things like that. Do you have to go back to the drawing board and do a complete rewrite on all of that? Or is it just an add-on and you say, hey, these are all 9.x supported Ansible modules?
No, we don't have to redo any of that stuff. So Ansible, as you know, like we spoke last time, Ansible has existing modules and they're independent of ICX software. So they're independently developed. So our initial rollout had at least about 10 or 15 modules, and now we're increasing that support to more operations like, you know, adding static routes, IPv6 static routes. We're also including an ICX upgrade module, QoS configurations, rate limiting, rate shaping, and we're also upgrading the Ansible support to version 2.10. So just more stuff, better stuff. Yeah, that's what. Oh, and I forgot this one thing. What we're working on is what you call Ansible Tower. I'm sorry, not Ansible Tower. It's Ansible AWX for Ansible, which is also an open source community project that lets users control their Ansible project more easily using a GUI-based environment. Essentially, what it does is it allows you to load your Ansible modules, and then you can create templates using AWX, and troubleshooting and looking at the flow of your network will just make it simpler using AWX. So we're looking at that as well. And one other thing I missed on last time is we do have a Git repo for Ansible. So all of our modules and playbooks will be posted on Git. So you have a direct, or the customers or users have a direct channel to engineering on anything that, on any questions or any concerns on the modules that are being posted.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, Git's amazing. I mean, putting stuff out there and then people having the ability to ask questions or help other people with their questions. It's a pretty cool platform. So, Well, that's cool that you're introducing the V6 stuff. I'm gonna give you a pat on the back, you and your entire team. So we're gonna have to go back in time a little bit. When Eris first acquired us, one of the principal engineers that they had for their network, Eris. You want to talk about IPv6 deployments? Holy moly, theirs was huge, and they had to have that support out of the gate because of providers, right? And so they did a full-blown forklift upgrade to their entire infrastructure. They ripped all of our competitors' gear out, and they dropped ICX in. And I was working with he's no longer here, but I was working with one of the engineers on a lot of the stuff they were doing. And he said, I am so relieved to find out that there's a vendor that actually implemented IPv6 into their hardware correctly. They had zero issues with anything. It just worked. He was ecstatic because he didn't have any problems with anything. So it was great. And that's
what we like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the training stuff I've done, I've always told the engineers, they didn't take L2 didn't take a whole lot of V6 cases. They'd see maybe one a year. I mean, they'd see one OSPF case a year. So it was kind of a difficult balance to be like, all right, well, you guys need to learn it because I'd rather have you deploy it, troubleshoot it, and deal with it in a class lab environment than on the phone with a customer, right? Like, you don't need to be trying to learn it then. So they went through it, and every time I go through it, I'm like, man, I wish people would deploy more of this. It's so clean and easy. I really wish people would do more with it. I do.
I agree.
But we'll get there. So,
yep.
Cool. So how's the API stuff going? I know you're working on that as well. Is it treating you well? You making progress, or is it,
We're definitely making progress. So our initial rollout is going to have basic operations like, changes in port management, PoE, things like static routes, OSPF, and, basic operations. But the goal is to extend it across a majority of our features that are widely deployed. So in a way we can, help customers, simplifying their configuration rollout. So today, or with 9.0, it's going to be a small subset, but eventually the goal is to extend that to a larger portion of our feature set.
So
that's the goal.
How do you see that working? Do you think that's something that people would use for collection of information or deployment of configurations? I mean, do you think one would get used more than the other?
Actually, both. I would say both. So we are going to support. So we see both use cases where there's going to be configuration changes that are going to be done programmatically. So that's one piece, and then collection of information as well. But for our first rollout, we're going to have only the first piece, and collection is going to be later on. So I don't have a clear date on that, but it's definitely on the roadmap.
Okay.
Yeah.
You live and breathe and die by a roadmap, don't you?
Yeah, I have a roadmap handy anytime I get a random call, for instance, like today.
Print it out and stick it on your wall and be like, all right, here's my talking points. I'm good to go.
But it's constantly changing. We're adding more as we find more room and more cycles. We constantly add more features. So that way we can extend our feature set on a specific release.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I know your plate's full. I think one of the challenging things in a professional environment is when you're firing on all cylinders, you're running, you're working your tail off, and you want to make sure that, people are appreciative of that. I can tell you that we are. So even though people aren't sending you emails every day or calling you saying, hey man, I know you've been working your butt off on this. This is awesome. It is very much appreciated. And my intention is to help showcase that as much as we can. So like I talked about, when 9X does release, we will do a live stream on it. I want to show the upgrade process. I want to show all of the different pieces of it. So the next time I call you, it won't be to trap you in a corner and get you to record a podcast with me. It'll probably be more to go through a script of what we're going to showcase on the live stream and get that information out there. I promise I won't do that to you.
For sure. No, thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah.
It's just not, no, I just wanted to mention that it's just not the PLM efforts. We have, dev, we also have SQA. It's a collective effort, and including you, since you're the one who's, making this available publicly to customers and users. So I think it's a team effort and a group effort, and I'm definitely excited about the way we do things.
Well, I appreciate that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many people involved, so many teams, so much that goes into it. It would be in my opinion, it would be a crime not to get all of that information out to folks. And, look, the podcast wasn't brought up to sit here and high five each other and over compliment each other. It was really brought to do two things. One, have a more relaxed conversation about a lot of the things that we're doing, because technical information gets so dry so fast. I mean, being in front of classrooms and going through how hashing works over a lag, or the inner workings of OSPF. Here's a show IP OSPF database. Go build the topology. That stuff is great, and you need to do that when you're in the trenches, but let's make it a little bit lighter. And then the other part of it was really showcasing the people that are behind all of these things that are happening and how much effort is going into it. That was the main goal. I mean, like I said, and I'll say this forever, I'm just a moron that's really good at asking dumb questions that somebody else is probably asking as well. So that's really the end all be all of it. So, well, I know I'm excited about it. Internally within education, I know there's levels of excitement, and then there's also levels of, oh my goodness, because it means we have to develop so much more additional content. But it's worth it. And 8.0 has been out for, at this point in the technology world, I mean, centuries, right? It's a very old operating system. So bringing in a new refreshed version, I think there's a lot of excitement behind that for sure. So all the teams involved, everybody, thank you. I know the efforts were not small. So
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So, all right, I got to wrap this up, but we are going to get together soon, because like I said, I do want to get this out on the live streams. Live streams have moved to one every other week, and that's just because I have entirely too much going on. So we'll get that going. Once it launches, we'll get that out there. So hopefully it's well received and you can kind of get over the hump here soon, because I know you have a lot of stuff going on.
I do. I do. And make sure you edit all the, the gibberish I might have said.
I didn't. That's the problem. If there's ever gibberish, it's me cutting my pieces out of it. So no, it's awesome. So we'll definitely get this thing rolling, and there'll be a ton more information coming, obviously. But yeah, I'm super excited. So March can't come quick enough.
All right.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right. Well, until next time. And like I said, you have a standing invite to come back anytime. So,
we'll keep that in mind. No, thank you.
Yeah. Because see, you get through 9.0, then you got to get through the 9.1 and the 9.2. See, you're not even off the hook yet.
I'm actually working on some other interesting projects, which I can't talk about it yet, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of time and many opportunities to talk about it. So I'm just going to keep that to myself for now. Until then, hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. And that's perfect. Ended on a cliffhanger, because what you did is now you just set yourself up to come back and record. I don't even have to pester you.
I'm getting used to this, man. Maybe a good thing, you know. Impromptu is not my realm, but I might actually get better at it.
Hey, you did awesome. So there you go. All right, bud.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you soon. Hang in there. And once everything's ready for prime time, we'll be in touch.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thanks,
all right.
man.
Thanks. See you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Ruckcast. If you just found us for the first time, be sure to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice so you can be notified of future episodes. If you have ideas for future episodes or can't find Ruckcast on your favorite platform, contact us at ruckcast@comscope.com. And as always, thanks for listening.